Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into today's story, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below. Until she read my resignation letter, my wife chose her lazy boyfriend over me. I never thought my life would come crashing down because of a single text message. But when it did, it wasn't just my marriage that fell apart. It was my entire belief in love, loyalty, and the future I thought I was building. It started like any other ordinary day. I was sitting in my office, buried in emails and reports, my mind focused on keeping our startup moving forward. My wife and I had built this company from nothing. Late nights, early mornings, sacrifices. Those were the bricks of our shared dream. We weren't just partners in business, we were partners in life. Or so I believed. When we first met, it felt like destiny. She was sharp, driven, and had this magnetic energy that made every challenge feel like an adventure. We were a team. I handled the operations, kept things running smoothly, while she took the lead, networking, pitching ideas, bringing in clients. We complemented each other perfectly, or at least that's what I told myself. But looking back, maybe I was blind. Maybe I didn't want to see the signs, the subtle changes, the late nights that didn't make sense, the business trips that stretched into long weekends. And then there was Adam. He joined our company under the guise of helping streamline marketing strategies. At first, I thought nothing of it. He was confident, maybe too confident for someone with such a thin resume. But my wife insisted. She believed he had potential. I trusted her judgment. I always did. It started with small things. Adam missing deadlines, messing up reports, showing up late. I raised my concerns, but my wife brushed them off. He's still learning, she'd say. Or worse, you're being too hard on him. I tried to believe her. I wanted to. After all, we were in this together. But the whispers started soon after. Hushed conversations in the office when they thought I wasn't listening. Quick glances when I walked into the room. And then there were the trips. My wife started taking Adam along for meetings that didn't require his presence. Trips that could have been handled over a call suddenly required them both to be out of town for days. I'd ask questions and she'd dismiss them. He's helping, she'd say. Or, you're reading too much into it. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe I was just being paranoid, overthinking every little detail. But when your gut starts whispering, it's hard to ignore it for long. One night, after another one of those business trips, she came home like nothing was wrong. She smiled, kissed me, and sat across from me on the couch, asking how my day was, and I played along. Because what else could I do? Accuse her without proof? Destroy everything we'd built on a hunch? But deep down, something inside me had already started to crumble. The breaking point came on a morning I'll never forget. We were in the office, wrapping up a meeting. She stood to leave, saying she needed to use the restroom. Her phone buzzed on the table, lighting up with a notification. I didn't mean to look. I swear I didn't. But my eyes moved on their own. And that's when I saw it. A message from Adam. Short, direct, filthy. In that split second, everything I believed about my marriage shattered. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. My mind screamed at me to do something. Anything. But I didn't. I stayed still. Silent. Watching my world fall apart. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the message. Cold. Calculated. Because I knew how this would play out. I'd confront her and she'd deny it. She'd twist my words, make me doubt myself, accuse me of jealousy or insecurity. Not this time. I slid my phone back into my pocket and walked out of her office. I didn't wait for her to come back. Couldn't. I didn't trust myself to stay calm, and I wasn't going to give her the chance to lie to my face. That night, I sat in the living room, staring at the walls. The message burned into my mind. She came home hours later, acting like nothing was wrong, like our world wasn't about to collapse. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead, I stayed silent. Because I wasn't ready for confrontation. I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. I was planning my next move. The next morning, I woke up with a decision weighing heavy on my chest. I wasn't the type to rush into confrontations. I'd learned long ago that emotions could cloud judgment, that anger could push you into mistakes you'd regret later. I needed clarity. I needed control. And most of all, I needed to make sure that when I confronted her, it would be on my terms. She wouldn't twist my words. She wouldn't flip the narrative. Not this time. So I spent that day watching, observing. I noted the way she spoke to Adam, the way she laughed just a little too hard at his jokes. The way she brushed her hand against his arm like it was nothing, even though it was everything. I saw the glances exchanged when they thought no one was watching. I heard the whispers, saw the pitying looks from the others in the office. Maybe they didn't know the full truth, but they suspected enough. I could feel it in the air, a quiet tension, a silent understanding that something wasn't right, and then there were the meetings. The sudden, last-minute ones that required her and Adam to be out of office 4 hours. The ones I wasn't invited to. The ones that didn't show up on the company calendar. Each time I asked, it was the same answer. It's nothing you need to worry about. It's just routine. Don't overthink it. But I wasn't overthinking it. I was seeing it for what it was, deception, plain and simple. And as I sat there, day after day, pretending not to notice, I felt something inside me harden. The man I had been, the one who believed in love, in trust, in partnership, started to fade. In his place was someone colder, sharper. Someone ready to act.by. The third day, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stay in that company any longer, not while my wife paraded her betrayal in front of me. Not while Adam sat smug at meetings, knowing he held more than just my wife's professional trust. But I also wasn't going to walk away quietly. I had built the company with her. My blood, sweat, and years were poured into every contract, every deal, every long night. I wasn't going to let her and Adam push me out and carry on as if I'd never mattered. If they wanted to burn the bridge, I'd make sure they felt the fire. That night, while she was out with Adam for one of their late strategy sessions, I sat down at my desk. The words came easier than I expected. Maybe it was the rage fueling me, or maybe it was the clarity that comes when you finally accepted a painful truth. I typed out my resignation letter, each word deliberate, each sentence final. But it wasn't just about leaving the company. It was about leaving the marriage. About ending the lie we had been living. I didn't dress it up with niceties or fake regrets. I wrote the truth. That I knew about the affair. That I wouldn't be a part of the charade any longer. That my departure was effective immediately. I ended it with a line that cut deeper than any argument could. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I signed the letter, printed it, and sat back in my chair. I stared at it for a long time, wondering how it had come to this. Wondering if there had been a moment, just one, where I could have saved what we had. But no. The truth was, it wasn't just the affair that killed us. It was the slow erosion of trust, the tiny betrayals that built up over time. The way she had stopped looking at me like I mattered. The way she had started seeing me as an obstacle instead of a partner. I folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. I didn't seal it. Not yet. I wanted to look her in the eyes when I handed it over, wanted to see the realization hit her. When she finally came home, it was late. Too late for any meeting to be believable. She dropped her bag by the door, stretched like she was exhausted, and offered me a tired smile. Long day, she said casually, like nothing was wrong. I said nothing, just watched her. She hesitated, her eyes flicking to me, sensing something different but not sure what. You okay? She asked, and I almost laughed. Almost? I told her I needed to talk. She frowned but nodded. Sat down across from me. Waiting. Expecting another night of routine conversation, maybe a little tension about her schedule, but nothing more. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the letter. I set it on the table between us. Her brow furrowed as she looked down at it. She picked it up, unfolded it, and started to read. I watched her face shift. Confusion. Shock. Denial. Anger. And finally, something like resignation. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. Don't, I said. Just don't. For a long moment, there was silence. Heavy. Crushing. She set the letter down, her fingers trembling slightly. You don't have to do this, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. She knew it was over. We both did. I stood up, ready to walk away, but she reached out, her hand brushing mine. Please. We can talk. We can fix this. I looked down at her, seeing not the woman I had married, but the stranger she had become. And I knew there was nothing left to say. It's already done, I said quietly. And I walked away. Upstairs. Into the guest room. Closed the door. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, waiting to feel something: anger, sadness, relief. But there was nothing. Just emptiness. The next morning, I got up, dressed, and went to the office for the last time. I gathered my things in silence. My colleagues watched me, some with sympathy, some with discomfort. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. The rumors had been there for weeks. They knew. And as I walked out of that building, I felt the weight of the years behind me. The sacrifices. The lies. The betrayal, but I wasn't done. Not yet. Because if they thought I was just going to fade away, they were wrong. This was just the beginning. Walking away from the company wasn't enough. Not for me. Not after everything I had sacrificed, after everything she and Adam had taken from me. I wasn't just leaving behind a job or a business, I was leaving behind years of trust, love, and belief. And while I could walk away from the office, I couldn't walk away from the feeling of betrayal that burned in my chest. She thought it was over. She thought I'd given up, that my resignation meant she could carry on with Adam like nothing had happened. But she underestimated me. She underestimated the man who had built the company alongside her, the man who had poured his soul into every project, every late-night meeting, every deal that made the business what it was. I wasn't just going to let them win. I wasn't going to let her turn me into some forgotten footnote in her story. So I planned my next move. The first step was claiming what was mine. Half of the company. It wasn't a question of fairness, it was a fact. Legally, I was entitled to it. I had proof of my contributions, years of documentation, records of contracts I had negotiated, projects I had overseen, and clients I had secured. She couldn't erase that no matter how much she wanted to. And deep down, I knew her greatest weakness wasn't Adam, it was her reputation. She prided herself on her image, on being seen as a strong, independent leader who built her empire from the ground up. She couldn't afford a scandal. She couldn't risk the truth coming out about how she betrayed her business partner and husband for an incompetent employee. That was my leverage, and I planned to use it. We met in her office. Neutral ground. The air between us was thick with tension. She tried to keep her expression neutral, tried to act like this was just another business meeting. But I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. She knew why I was there. She knew the battle that was coming. I laid out my terms calmly, clearly. Half of the company. No court battles. No drawn-out negotiations. I was willing to walk away quietly, but I wasn't leaving empty-handed. She hesitated, her jaw tightening, but she didn't argue. She knew I held all the cards. She agreed. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe she thought it would be easier to give me what I wanted and be done with it. Either way, I didn't care. I got what I came for, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because Adam still sat at that company desk, still walked through those halls as if he belonged there. As if he hadn't destroyed everything I had built. He thought he was safe. That with me gone, he could continue his charade. But he was wrong. The moment the ownership papers were signed, the first thing I did was draft his termination letter. Simple. Direct. Final. I didn't need to justify it. I didn't need to explain myself. He wasn't just incompetent, he was a liability. And I wasn't going to let him leech off the company any longer. I didn't deliver the letter myself. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me angry, of seeing me react. Instead, I had it sent through HR, cold, professional, the way he deserved. I heard about his reaction later. Shock, confusion, anger. He went to her, demanding an explanation. But she couldn't protect him this time. She couldn't fight for him without exposing everything. She tried to cover it, tried to act like it was a business decision. But Adam wasn't stupid. He knew. He knew it was me. And when he realized he couldn't fight it, that the decision was final, his anger turned to fear. Because in our industry, connections mattered. And I had more than enough. I made a few calls, sent a few emails. Quiet. Discreet. By the end of the week, Adam wasn't just out of our company, he was out of the industry. Nobody wanted to hire a man who had been fired for incompetence, a man whose reputation was now tainted by whispers of scandal. His ride was over, and I made sure the fall was a hard one. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Not really. Because even with Adam gone, the damage was done. The company wasn't the same. I wasn't the same. She wasn't the same. We finalized the paperwork quickly after that. Clean. Efficient. Neither of us wanted to drag it out. I signed my half over to operate independently. I didn't want to be involved in her day-to-day. I didn't want to be in meetings with her, exchanging fake smiles and hollow pleasantries. She could keep her side. Run it how she wanted. I'd do the same with mine. And when it was over, when the last signature was scrawled across the final document, we didn't even speak. We didn't shake hands. We didn't say goodbye. We just walked away. For a while, that silence was enough. It gave me space to think, to breathe, to rebuild. I focused on my side of the business. I made new deals, strengthened old partnerships, proof that I didn't need her or anyone to succeed. I thrived. My company thrived. But even with all that success, the question lingered. Had I done enough? Had I really made her pay for what she did? Some nights I'd lie awake, replaying it all in my mind, wondering if I should have taken more. wondering if I should have exposed her publicly, torn down her reputation piece by piece. I had the proof. I had the power. But I didn't use it. Maybe I should have. Maybe letting her keep her side of the company was mercy she didn't deserve, and yet a part of me wondered if that would have been for me or for her. Would it have been justice? Or just revenge? Would it have made me feel better, or would it have dragged me down with her? I didn't know. Maybe I never would. But one thing was certain. She had lost me. And whether she realized it or not, that loss was permanent. Irreversible. And the company she kept? It would always be a shadow of what it could have been because she had traded integrity for betrayal, loyalty for lies. And in the end, she was left with nothing but the wreckage she had created. Months passed, but the scars of betrayal never fully faded. I poured myself into my work, building my half of the company from the ground up. Every deal, every client, every success felt like a small step towards reclaiming the life that had been torn from me. I wasn't just working to prove something to her, I was proving it to myself. That I could survive. That I could thrive without her. That I didn't need anyone who didn't value me. But late at night, when the world grew quiet and the shadows crept in, the memories returned. The laughter we once shared, the dreams we had built together, the nights we stayed up planning our future. I wondered if any of it had been real. Or if it had all been a carefully crafted illusion, one that shattered the moment I uncovered her betrayal. I heard whispers about her now and then. How the company wasn't doing as well. How the staff turnover had increased. How some clients had quietly backed away. Her reputation was slipping bit by bit. She was trying to hold it together, to pretend nothing had changed. But I knew the truth. Her strength wasn't in the company or the title she clung to. It was in the partnerships she had destroyed. In the trust she had broken. Without that, no empire could stand for long. And Adam? He had vanished. No one in the industry wanted his name on their payroll. His downfall had been swift, brutal, and absolute. I didn't feel guilt over it. Not for a second. He made his choices just like she did. And now they were living with the consequences. But even as I rebuilt, even as I moved forward, there was a question that refused to leave me. Had I truly won? I had taken my share of the company. I had removed Adam from the business, from the industry. I had secured my future, ensured my success. But had I really made her pay for what she did? There were nights when I thought about walking into her office, confronting her in front of everyone. Laying the truth bare, letting the world see the woman behind the mask. Watching her reputation crumble under the weight of her own lies. But I didn't. Not because I was protecting her, but because I was protecting myself. I had already lost enough. My marriage. My trust. My belief in the person I thought she was. I wasn't about to lose my dignity too, and maybe that was my final victory. Walking away without dragging myself into the mud with her. Letting her sit in the empire she'd built on deception and watch it slowly erode from within. Because I knew the truth would catch up to her eventually. It always does. The cracks were already showing. The whispers growing louder. One day it would all come crashing down, and when it did, it wouldn't be because I forced it, it would be because she had built it that way. Weak. Dishonest. Broken, but even with that knowledge, the weight of what happened never fully left me. There were moments when I caught myself wondering if things could have been different. If I had confronted her sooner. If I had demanded more. If I had fought harder to save what we had. But every time those thoughts surfaced, I reminded myself of the truth. She had made her choice long before I made mine. She had chosen lies over loyalty, betrayal over trust. And once the choice was made, there was no turning back. There was nothing left to save. One evening, months after it all ended, I ran into an old colleague at a networking event. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, catching up on business and mutual contacts. But I could see the curiosity in his eyes. The unspoken question. Finally, he asked about her. About the company. I gave a neutral answer, nothing that could stir gossip. But then he said something that stuck with me. She doesn't seem the same, he said. Like she's lost her edge. I didn't respond, just offered a small, knowing smile. Because I understood better than anyone. She hadn't lost her edge. She had given it away. Piece by piece, with every lie, every betrayal, every choice that pulled her further from the person she used to be. And me? I wasn't the same either. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I was stronger, sharper, wiser. Betrayal had burned me, but it had also forged me into someone who knew his worth, who wouldn't be fooled again. Someone who understood that trust isn't just given, it's earned, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. I carried that lesson with me every day. In business, in life, in every interaction. It became my shield, my strength. And though there were still nights when the memories haunted me, when I wondered if I had done enough, I always came back to the same answer. I survived. I walked away with my dignity, my future, my self-respect. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all. Now, when I look back, I don't see loss. I see lessons. I see strength. And I know that no matter how much she tries to hold onto her facade, the truth will always linger in the shadows. Waiting. Watching. Ready to bring it all down. And when it does, I won't be there to catch her. I won't be there to save her. Because I already saved the one person who mattered. Myself.